Start treating manufacturing like the golden egg that it is in this state, and quit trying to be a tourist town or a tourist state. We're not that. Start treating manufacturing like what it is. It's the staple of the economy. Start funding programs to make it successful. Start funding programs to drive business to PA manufacturers, and quit taxing the crap out of them. Quit sending OSHA in to fine them $10,000, $15,000. Quit doing that stuff. I'll be there.
Yep. There's a machine gun nest. Nate's running right at it.
That's right.
Straight on.
Yep. Give me that grenade. So, dude, almost Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for.
I agree. It's I think it's going to be a good one. You doing Thanksgiving at your place? You go to your parents or?
Yeah, we have a pretty big extended family, and usually everybody comes over to my parents' place and.
Everybody, like, how many people are we talking here?
Usually like 30 to 40.
Holy balls. That's a big one. Wow, that's a big one. I mean, we're going to have, 14 at our house this year, and that's a big one. I'm doing a turkey traditional style, and then I'm working on a ham right now. It's been in the cure now for 6 days.
I figured you'd be like a deep fryer kind of guy.
I think that's next year. Yeah? I'm going to do, I did the ham for the first time last year where I cured it for like 13 days and then smoked it for 15 hours. And it took away from my perfect turkey that I made because I haven't screwed up a turkey in a long time.
So it didn't turn out good?
Oh, the ham was awesome. The turkey was great too, but the ham was just more great. Okay. And it was too small. The ham, there was a bone left. That was all. Yeah, it says something that our little brother, obviously, who comes to Thanksgiving, said, "Hey, you making a ham?" And Steve goes, "Yeah, I couldn't find a ham." He called around for like 5 days and had who was it? The Gordon's Meat Market ordered him a frozen one in, just so he could get it for Steve to make the ham.
Yeah, if you wait till the last minute on the holidays. So, hey, what is the biggest, I guess, benefit do you think is going to come from a new administration? What is Trump going to do for manufacturing? Do you think he's going to do something?
I certainly hope so. You start looking, you do deep dives on, if you ever want to get infuriated on the Pennsylvania budget or something like that, and you see the massive amount of money spent where it's spent.
Dude, that's like my daily light reading.
Oh my gosh, it's just nuts. I don't know how that can be considered light. It's just you start diving into what the different places where all this money goes, and a lot of them are. It seems like it's very discretionary, and. The thing that got me, because you're the one who sent me the actual budget for next year for Pennsylvania, and I was looking at it, and it's interesting that it seems like only in government can you overspend on almost every line item and expect to overspend.
Right.
Like they have a line that shows what we have, and then they have a line that shows what we're going to spend. And what we're going to spend is more than what we have, and that seems to be just perfectly okay.
Yeah.
As a business, whether you're a manufacturer or an art gallery or a grocery store, it doesn't seem like that works.
No, it doesn't work.
Only in government. Well, the only business that seems to get away with it outside of government is the post office.
Well, imagine for a second if you were a business, and let's say that your annual revenue is $1 million. Let's say to run that business, you spent $2 million. How long would you be in business?
Not very long. Not very long.
Yeah.
But apparently the government can do that constantly. According to the research, we're over budget by $2.6 billion in Pennsylvania. Which is just insane.
And what about the trade deficit? I mean, so that's the business. Your business is the U.S., and you're buying $1.1 trillion more from other businesses than you are producing and outputting in GDP. $1.1 trillion.
You would imagine at some point we would just stop the never-ending fire hose of our money going all over the world and expect the world to buy something from us. But the way that this has been set up over the last several administrations, not counting Trump, who did a good job of negotiating trade deals, is just, hey, let's see if we can get everything cheaper somewhere else and just send all our money out of country.
Right.
And then we wonder why the dollar isn't worth shit. I was looking up a whole bunch of stuff about these tariffs that Trump wants to do, and it's interesting to me that
if you can wade through all of the articles on Google about what it's going to cost the consumer, it's going to cost the average consumer $2,600.
Well, what I find very humorous about that, not that any of us should find any humor in it, but used as a political weapon, it's Trump's going to do this and it's going to cost the consumer. Be afraid.
Right.
Well, it turns out that on whitehouse.gov, as I'm wading through the muck to try and find any actual information on these tariffs, that in May of 2024, President Biden, which it wasn't President Biden, but it was someone who had him sign the thing. Just saying, hey, sign this, Joe. What?
Is there ice cream?
Yeah, is there ice cream with it? But they actually he signed a bunch of tariffs against Chinese corporations.
Okay.
And the exact headline, and I wrote it down, is Biden takes action to protect American workers and businesses from China's unfair trade practices. That is it's on whitehouse.gov.
Right.
May 14th of this year.
Yep.
So the Democrats know exactly what's happening. Like, China they've hacked a bunch of businesses and stolen technology from the United States, and then they reproduce it, paying their workers the average worker in China makes $5.75 an hour. I mean, even teachers and stuff there make about $20,000 a year. So I mean, they pay little to nothing in wages, and they have no regulation. There's no EPA. They don't give a shit how much crap they dump into the oceans or rivers or whatever there. I mean, they control, I think, 90% of the solar panel, the components for solar panels, and they just laugh their asses off while they sell it to the United States because we care about the environment.
Right.
But you're required because they make them so much more cheaply because they don't have any regulation. All God knows what comes out of the manufacture of those things, some type of silica that lasts for like 10,000 years when you bury it. They don't give a shit about that. So they get to pay less in labor. There's no regulation on how they make the things, and they sell them so cheaply to the United States. Right. No U.S. business can ever compete in that marketplace. And what the tariff does is it raises the price of that and forces American businesses to innovate. Like when Toyota started selling in the early 70s, when Toyota started selling cars here. Toyota was selling cars so cheap. It was a huge upheaval at the time, where they're selling these trucks at a fraction of the price that people were paying for Ford or Chevy or whatever, Buick. And what happened? Ford and Chevy and all them innovated, found a cheaper, more efficient way to make cars. And cars then, before you knew it, Ford and Chevy, were making cheaper cars that were, just as good. So I don't understand.
I mean, that's the argument against it, kind of, because people would argue that if we basically subsidize the American business by putting a tariff on the Chinese business, then we are not creating that free competition environment, which would create a reduction in prices of goods.
Well, but what the biggest portion of the tariff is because when you look at tariffs on other goods going into China, which try to find that data, you have to dig for 1,000,000 years to find that data. The tariffs on goods going into China, I even wrote some of them down. Corn, 25%, milk, 45%, apples, 65%.
When we're exporting to China, that's the tariff that they're putting on our goods. And then we're just like...
Yeah, and in addition to that, they charge an additional 17% tax on the thing. So the tariffs of our goods going into China are tariffed so highly that what happens?
Nobody's going to buy it.
People move their businesses to China to be able to make the product in China and sell it in China, which is exactly what tariffs are meant to do in America. Right. That businesses, if they do a lot of business in America and go, hey, with the tariffs, it's going to make more money for us to open up a factory in Nebraska or whatever, and sell our widget, whatever the hell it is, in America. Because let's face it, we're the consumers, man. I mean, there's a certain amount of power that comes with being the people with the money. If all of a sudden everyone agrees, hey, we're not buying from
whatever place, then their stranglehold on the market is broken.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
You know, and there was a big push back, around 9/11 and stuff like that to, hey, everyone should be buying American everything. Buy American everything. And that has just, it's gone. Like, no one gives a crap about that anymore.
There's, and there's intangible benefits to it too. I mean, there are tangible, but they're not as recognized. I mean, so number one, if we are flooding foreign markets with the U.S. dollar, that devalues the U.S. dollar.
Exactly.
So the stronger the U.S. dollar is, the more buying power that it has. And so when you're just looking at this straight, hey, it's going to raise the cost of goods coming into the U.S., that's not looking at the whole picture.
No.
Even if the cost of those goods goes up in the U.S., but the U.S. dollar is stronger, you can buy more of those goods. So I think that's a pretty important thing to recognize.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I just hate how the headlines about this stuff.
Oh, it's just
so one-sided.
It's just nuts.
It seems to be the whole media right now. Everything has to be about fear mongering.
Right.
And they're talking about, these tariffs on these goods could raise these costs. But if we're bringing in revenue, and I think this would be the way, like if I was in the shoes of the president or the president-elect, and I'm going to raise tariffs and start bringing in income that way for the government, then we lower what we're taking from the American people through income taxes or regulations or permitting or any of those types of fees,
Right.
so that the Americans have more dollars
Yep.
to buy things with, and maybe we stop just wasting our money on cheap crap and
Yep.
buy good stuff that's going to last for a long time.
Right.
We talk about this, in manufacturing with machinery. And we have machines in our building that predate our grandparents.
Yeah.
And still work.
Yeah.
Back when things were built to last.
Right.
And now it's like you buy a machine and it costs you, say, $60,000.
Yeah.
You plan on, depreciating that machine for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, if it keeps running for another 7 years, you're lucky,
You're in
or
the
you
money.
just throw the thing away and get a new one.
Right.
Because that's kind of, we've become a disposable society.
Right.
No,
like I used to in construction. My dad owned a remodeling company. We would a lot of times go change out people's dishwashers, and usually the dishwasher that you were changing out, number one, it weighed 3 times as much as the one that you're putting.
Yeah,
in.
the old Maytags and
Number
stuff.
two,
Yeah.
that dishwasher was 20 years old. The one you put in there now, it's only going to last 5-6 years.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I've seen that because when I bought my current house, the appliances were all Maytags and they were all 25 years old. So one by one they just started dropping off, and you can't fix them. They're there's different regulations, like on the fridge with the Freon, and you can't get parts for them. They're just not fixable.
Yeah.
So I replaced the appliances with a whole new set of the new American-made stuff, the Whirlpools, which were very highly rated. But I've already replaced the dishwasher once.
Yep.
Yeah, we're getting ready to have to replace ours.
Mine's
Yeah,
only
it's-
2 years old,
speak-
and it's already.
Yeah, speaking of the old dishwasher, but I think tariffing and the tariffs are meant to create competition, to make it an even playing field, where we live in a country where manufacturing especially, but most industries always have the threat of some sort of regulation or enforcement or something, or minimum wages, anything
Right.
that restricts what you can do with your business. Where if you have countries that don't have those same regulations, it simply costs more to make stuff here.
Sure.
From anything, you pick anything.
Right.
Well, and I don't think anyone would dispute that, economically, China is using the exact same template that we had back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
People
They
seem to
tariff the shit out of, stuff coming into the country to make businesses open up in China.
Right.
To be able to sell stuff in China, because if you can make it in China and then ship it anywhere else, and no one else charges large tariffs on most things, it's only China that does it.
Well,
So
it's important to do something with the tariff money too. I
Right.
mean, that's something that could be reinvested in American manufacturing.
yeah,
Well, it's that, or like I said, if we're saying we're going to bring in $500 billion in tariffs, reduce American taxpayers' burdens by
Absolutely.
$500 billion,
Right.
even if that only ends up being $50 a person, say, and that's probably not correct, but
500 billion. Well, so we have approximately 300, a little more than 300 million people in the U.S. So that's probably like $1,000
Yeah.
a piece.
But reduce then an American citizen has an extra $1,000, we'll say, to spend on something here.
Oh, which, by the way, sorry to interrupt you. The amount that we've spent in Ukraine adds up to about $1,000 per person in the U.S.
Yeah. So that's good. That's good. I feel good about that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt
well,
you.
Well, yeah. It's that type of thing. And then if you offset the tax cuts with tariffs on incoming goods, that's a good thing. And then you start shrinking the government, just getting rid of waste.
Right.
Then we can get back to a balanced budget or maybe a budget surplus to start paying down our debt faster.
Now, what does surplus mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't. No one remembers what that
remembers
fucking
what
word
a
means.
surplus is, at least not when it comes to government. I mean, businesses know what a surplus is. It's hard to get to a surplus.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes effort. It takes a lot of work.
Yep.
But in China, they, for corporate tax, they charge a flat tax. It's a flat 25% tax. Any corporation out there, I don't know, if you paid less than, say, 28 or 30%, you found some nice loopholes in the tax code.
Right.
And then small businesses, they charge a flat 20%. So, they've stimulated business by tariffing goods coming into their country. Mm-hmm. They charge a lower tax rate on their businesses that are there, which makes, like, if you make whatever widget in the United States and the taxes they're killing you at 38% tax rate, and you go, hey, man, I can open up in China and I can save 20%. On my taxes. Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. For large corporations, that is a fucking boatload of money.
Right.
And China's like, yeah, come on, start up here. No regulations, that you're going to pay your people a fraction of what you would have to pay them in the United States, which is yet more revenue. You can afford to sell your product a little bit more cheaply, which makes you get more market share as opposed to a United States-based company. The only way to combat that type of stuff is to start tariffing Chinese goods to a point where businesses that are there go, hey, we sell most of this stuff in the United States. It looks like it's going to make more sense for us to make it in the United States again.
Yeah.
And bring a bunch of this business back.
Yep.
Trump signed a deal shortly before COVID started where he started imposing tariffs on, some of Chinese goods and negotiated a deal where to offset some of the trade deficit, because China right now operates at a trade surplus of like almost $900 billion a year.
Yep.
So the business of China is profitable by $900 billion. So the whole point of this trade was that, we're going to tariff some of the goods coming in, and they're going to be required by whatever means they require this, to buy $200 billion more worth of American-made products. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened, which we could do the black helicopters on that as soon as China's revenues were threatened.
Yeah.
That COVID gets released. I'm not gonna conspiracy theory that one, but if you believe in coincidences,
it seems like you could draw a line there.
But then as soon as COVID happened and Trump got ousted, they looked at that thing and looked at Biden and went, yeah, we're not buying any of that shit.
Right.
And they didn't do any of it. Yeah. They didn't buy any of the goods. They actually laid off buying a bunch of goods by, I think it was, 70 billion or something like that. So they actually bought less stuff from the United States. And I mean, the fact that this isn't on the front page of the news all the time, back during the Cold War, everyone knew that it was like kind of us against Russia, and if someone was like, oh yeah, this is made in Russia, I'm not buying that.
Right.
And why there's no outrage in America for taking all of our U.S. dollars that we work very hard for and sending them all to China, where China converts it to whatever they have, yen or whatever the hell it is. And they use that money to come over here and buy up U.S. land. Yep. And avoid tariffs by having Chinese companies in the United States that buy all the lumber and stuff like that. And they just buy it, and they have it shipped to their facility, and then they put it on a container and send it over.
It's crazy that anybody that actually wants America to succeed would be like, yeah, that works.
Well, the thing is, that was something that got overlooked going to lumber, is that when President Trump in his first term, he made it mandatory that China couldn't buy logs from us because they would come over and buy all the logs, and then they would mill it in China for whatever purposes they were going to use it for, whether it be pulp or lumber for housing or whatever they were using it for. And the mandate was if you were taking lumber out of the country, it couldn't be in log form. You had to mill it here. So you had to be milled into rough lumber here or pulpwood or whatever they were going to use it for. Right. It had to. So we got that sale, so to speak, here, instead of them just coming over, buying up a lumber yard worth of logs, putting them in containers, and then just floating them back on the boat that they came over in to take it to China.
Right.
So that has gone by the wayside now, as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
I also was trying to do a deep dive into the tariffs and like what we tariff on the way in, but if you pull up the 2024 tariff document, it's 4,400 pages.
Oh wow!
I was going to print it out and bring it, and then I I thought about it, and that's like two full. That's two full toner cartridges and like 5 reams of paper, 7 reams of paper. So, and we would just have it all over the room here, and
and the other thing I was going to bring up too about one of the benefits of tariffs is, even if we could just produce money forever and send it over to other countries, the one thing that you're really doing, we've seen a pretty dramatic reduction in the amount of manufacturing in the U.S. over the past decade, and when you are losing your manufacturing base, you're losing your stability and your security as a country. Not only are you losing that manufacturing capability, you have to depend on somebody like China to, create goods for the U.S. military, for example. But you're also reducing our ability to compete. And I had one other point, but I can't remember what it was. But you're losing your security as a country by shutting down your businesses and sending them somewhere else.
I think the best example of that is, and I'm not going into the origins or the theories behind the COVID pandemic, but look at what happened when there was runs on something this simple, Lysol spray, disinfectant spray. Mm-hmm. You spray your counter with, or you spray your gym bag with, or whatever.
Yep.
You couldn't get it anywhere. Rubber gloves, couldn't get them anywhere. Masks, if you were a mask wearer or when you were mandated to wear them, there was no place to buy them. Like we went up when we first got allowed to be open again, we went and we looked for masks for our people to wear, not because they needed them. The social distancing is very easy to do in our shop, but like when they were having lunch, right. People, if they wanted a mask, they had to have one, and there was no place to buy them.
Eating through a mask is
it's
tough.
difficult, right? But then not just that, but think about, there were shortages on basic pharmaceuticals because a lot of people don't understand. We don't make most of that stuff here either.
We've had a shortage of saline bags for years now.
Yeah, saline bags, all kinds of just stuff, and they don't realize. Well, not all that stuff is made in China. Like rubber gloves and the masks and stuff were made in China, but a lot.
I think that's Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, and I know a lot of the pharmaceuticals come from big manufacturers in India.
Yeah,
and with no trade happening, we don't make those here.
Right.
So it was getting hard to find an ibuprofen tablet for a little while, or
syringes, stuff like that.
A Tylenol tablet.
Right.
Thankfully, Amazon had access to those. You can vilify Jeff Bezos all you want, but that guy's a genius, for the supply chain that he created.
Yeah.
And
from selling books.
Although I'll tell you what, that's like I would hesitate to even call it a micro scale, but that is a smaller scale example of what is happening in the trade relationship between U.S. and China.
Yeah.
Because basically everyone said, we want to buy shit cheaper. And so that's where Amazon came in. We can get stuff really cheap. We can ship it faster than individual businesses and all that. How many businesses have gone under because of Amazon?
Well, but think about that. That model is a very loose interpretation of the way Walmart came in. Mm-hmm. Walmart cut costs by having their own fleet. And they would go right to the manufacturers with their own trucks, move it, and bring it here, and
negotiate much lower deals because of the buying power.
That's the way Walmart would do it. For the longest time, and I think to this day still, one of the plastics manufacturers out in Girard still all the totes and stuff that you buy at Walmart, Sterilite totes and stuff, are all from that plastics manufacturer. So you see Walmart trucks pulling up there all the time, taking truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of, the cheap plastic totes that you get for, $4 or $5 at Walmart.
Well, they're 15 to 20 now, but
Speaking of buying power, how about that article you sent me about the credit card processing?
Oh God, don't even get me started on that crap.
I was a little.
That's the way you devalue the dollar right there. That's the scare of all electronic currency, is you just devalue your wealth by, well, I spend $1. What, you go swipe for $1? Well, that dollar actually costs $1. $1.25 or whatever, a quarter or whatever, because there's a processing fee on it,
right?
And then that wealth just disappears. So you spent $1,
which I just always thought was so insane. Like, they're moving a digital number from one ledger to another.
Yep.
That's going to cost you 25 cents. I
Yep.
mean, it's automated. There's no work involved whatsoever, but it's just skip.
And for people who are listening, what we're talking about is the Senate's having hearings right now about where they have Mastercard and Visa, and it's basically talking about a monopoly, like where Mastercard and Visa control a little over 80% of the market share when it comes to credit card processing, and they actually spend money to pay people to not compete with them. So they basically set the standard. It's the same thing with Verizon, when Verizon was like the only carrier. And they had to break up that monopoly, so other places had a chance.
You're
to
thinking
compete.
pre-Verizon, and that's like General Telephone, and
But what
Bell.
they're doing
it was Bell, it was Pacific Bell or Atlantic Bell or whatever it was, and they actually got broken up in the late '70s, early '80s, and that's where Verizon came from, and AT&T, and so you had a whole bunch of communications companies that were all one conglomerate at one point that got broke up into small businesses by the federal government.
Yeah.
But with the credit card processors, and this is not a news story that's on Fox News or something. This is the actual, like, watching the Senate hearings. Is I think it's Josh Hawley who's talking to these guys, and their profit margins. And just, this is a credit card processor that they just provide a means to take money out of one account and put it into another. Their profit margins exceed 50%.
Sure. Well,
50, like 50, and there's very little work involved in it. It's just transferring money from one place to another via your debit card, or if you do have an actual credit card debt in this country is up over $1 trillion. Credit card debt in this country, $1 trillion.
And they're charging these people what, like 28% interest?
Yeah. The average rate is, I think they said 29%, just a shade under 29% average. And so what they're trying to say is, so you guys have over 80% of this market share, and your profits are in excess of 50%. And they're trying to say that, hey, to break up any of this means that we're going to go under. You're making 50%. Right. Anyone who sells anything, if you make 50% on that shit, you are killing it.
I don't.
That's the best margin ever.
That low. There's no way it's even that low.
Well, and what they're talking about is profit. So, is that before expense or is it after? So if we're talking straight profit, if that's after expense, that they're probably making 70 or 80%.
Advertise at the Super Bowl, and,
right?
Name the stadium after us.
Well, if we get into the Department of Government Efficiency, we'll go into a Super Bowl ad that I'm sure you'll love to hear about.
Well, but when's the last time you saw Mastercard or Visa advertise a card? Never, because they own all of it.
Yeah, I think
they used to.
I used to see that. Yeah.
Well, but nowadays, since they're the ones who back up debit cards, and stuff like that.
They used to have that during any sporting event, and you used to see signs and stuff. Go to the Cleveland Browns stadium, but don't take your American Express card.
Yeah. Because
it's Visa and MasterCard only, and it's like that in a lot of places. Although every place now takes every credit card, every major one. I mean, but there's only 4 major credit cards.
Right.
You got American Express, Discover, MasterCard, and Visa. But MasterCard and Visa, I mean, how many Visa cards do you have in your wallet? I think I have 3. I think I have 3, and I have 2 MasterCards.
Right.
But that goes back to the monopoly, where as big as American Express or Discover is, they're a fraction of the market share of MasterCard and Visa. So MasterCard and Visa can afford to charge less in fees, which means they get used more.
Right.
And
but
Well,
you know,
didn't they have,
but
like,
the
a
biggest
small
thing they were,
business owner on there,
yeah,
and I
but
think
yeah,
the case they were
I was just
making
gonna say
that, you know, Visa and MasterCard are charging him an interchange fee that's way higher than someone like who's
Walmart, yeah.
Well, they were talking about Walmart, and they had a
Which-
small business owner from Minnesota, which is where Josh Hawley was from,
Right.
Missouri.
and his fees are double what like a Walmart fee is, and I can understand to a point that it's a volume processing amount, but charging the giant companies less, you know, you can make the justification for it. That's just like buying power, right?
Right.
But then you're saying, well, we don't encourage small businesses, even though on the day after Thanksgiving, every credit card says how they're pro small business and everything.
Yeah.
And you know,
but out of the
you'll
other
get-
side
you'll
of their
get the-
face, they charge more to
you'll get
small
the- you'll get
businesses
the
than they
ones-
do to the big ones.
You get the ones on there that say, oh, I used my cash back to buy health insurance for my business, or buy this for my business, or to put back into this or that. But the cashback rewards program is just something that's passed on to the customer anyway,
Oh, yeah.
in the form of higher merchant fees.
Yep.
You know,
Oh, I mean, we lose, I don't know, $20,000 a year on
Yeah.
credit cards.
I was going to say, for every transaction, you just take the first 4% and just take it right off the top and give it to the credit card the
Right.
credit card company.
So that they could just
Yeah.
sit there and watch
well,
this
and
number.
and that's the thing. Like, how many businesses have you gone to, especially if you shop small? Which, you know, we try to shop small. If you swipe your credit card at a small business, how many times are you getting hit for $1 for a
Right.
credit card fee, or $2,
Yep.
or just a straight percentage off the top? It has become prevalent over the last 4 or 5 years to really start saying, look, I can't just keep taking this hit to my profit. I'm going to have to pass this cost on. So who ends up paying it is the customer
Right.
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And then the credit card processors are like, well, what are you going to do? You going to not take our credit cards? You can't do that. You will go out of business. You know, if you went to cash only, it's hard. It's hard if you're selling a product, especially if you sell a product from your wherever you're at. Like, you're in the same boat as we are. You do your work nationwide. Not everybody wants to pay with check or
Yeah.
wire transfer, or
Yeah.
they want to just put it on their credit card.
Right.
And we have customers who do that, go, we're putting our house full of your product, then I just want to put it on my credit card so I get the flight miles, or I get the cashback reward, or whatever.
How about if I just pay for your next flight?
Yeah.
Well, so what a lot of businesses are doing is, if you're going to pay with credit card, there's a fee. Like, oh, it's
That was
yeah,
illegal
it's
for a while too. You weren't allowed to explicitly do that.
no, I don't know about
And
that.
it may even still be the case. Like, I'm pretty sure, and I think the rule might have changed a couple years ago, but you weren't allowed to charge a fee because of a credit card, which obviously that would be the lobbying of Visa and
Right.
MasterCard to do that. But yeah, I've always been a little bit torn about that situation. It's like, how do you know when a business is too big? And it's because I'm really big on free market. You know, I'm really big on capitalism. I think it makes a lot of sense. But there are a lot of instances, and we're seeing them pop up more and more in our country over the past decade. Amazon, super critical of Amazon, super critical of Google, super critical of all of these big conglomerates that have just killed businesses.
Well, I mean, you Amazon, Google are the biggest, by far and away.
eBay.
Yeah, I mean, eBay's a tiny fraction now. That was a huge one for years, but Amazon took all those ones out. Wayfair is nothing compared to Amazon.
Yep.
But then you look at other places, you know, the Walmarts of the world. If you're talking retail, Walmart and Target are the two biggest ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's not any gigantic grocery store change, but I mean, I guess locally here we got Wegmans and Giant Eagle
they're
that
still
pretty
very
much
small.
dominate everything. So you never see small retailers anymore. Small retailers have it hard, but then the ones that are always left out are the giant restaurant conglomerates. You know, like Darden Restaurants has how many, you know, faces of their restaurant. You got your Olive Gardens and your Red Lobsters
Right.
and all these that are all part of one giant conglomerate. So they crush the small mom and pop restaurants that can't compete with their buying power. Again, buying power. It's all buying power.
Right.
When you can go to a fish market and say, I want all your fish, but I want to pay 10% less, and they'll go, okay, we'll take the lower profit to sell all of our inventory.
So how do you fix that? I mean, I could make the argument that Amazon created a net positive influence on user experience in terms of digital e-commerce, right? So it's made everyone have to get better at the game. Like, you have to, now when you see a good private company that's, selling stuff online, they've got their reviews, they've got their shipping times, we've learned that we have to have all this information because Amazon kind of figured out that was the optimal user experience. So it has created some positive effects in that, but then with the buying power, no one can compete. And so, like, does that just mean, okay, Amazon takes winner takes all?
Well, but the thing is, Amazon doesn't make things. They take one person's product and they sell it.
Right.
So if Amazon was a manufacturer, I can see what you're saying.
Just like the credit card companies, they're taking a cut off the top. They're taking value out of the economy.
Yeah, so however Amazon gets a hold of their products, if someone comes to a business and as a representative of Amazon and goes, hey, there's a lot of demand for this, how many do you have? I'll take them all.
Right.
And then, or however that works, I don't know. I don't sell anything on Amazon. But, all they've provided is a retail platform to buy fucking everything.
Right.
Yeah, you could buy one dirty gym sock on Amazon. I'm sure if you search for it, you could find it. Yeah. And, so, I mean, I think they, by and large, Amazon, what it's done is it's made products that you may probably not have been able to find locally and be able to just buy anything you want. Right. We actually had, I don't own a motorcycle, and all of a sudden I get an Amazon package and it's a motorcycle battery. I'm like, what in the hell is this shit? I'm like, oh, somebody ordered a motorcycle battery on Amazon, and so we processed the thing and we had to have it sent back or whatever. And but you just think, like, yeah, someone bought a battery full of acid and threw it in a fucking box in some Amazon warehouse and shipped it across the country wherever it came from. Yeah. There was a time where, I don't know, if you've ever had to replace the battery in your car, they're really careful about that stuff. Like, they charge you a whole extra amount, and there's a core charge and this and that. Yeah, go to Amazon. They'll just ship you one. Right. No problem.
Yeah, and who can compete with that?
Yeah.
And I just find it troubling because, even, in this business doesn't mean that much to me, but I started a business 15 years ago called skateboardforkids.com. I still have the website. I don't make any sales on it. I did make sales on it. I made, an extra $20,000, $30,000 a year off of it at one point in time. But as Amazon has gotten more and more and more powerful, sales go down. Eventually, you just can't compete. I mean, their margins, they can operate off of very tight margins with the product because they're just selling such a massive quantity of them.
Right. Well, any of those little widgets like that
out there have the same story, and probably businesses that were a lot more. They thought that the business they were running was a lot more important than that particular business example I have. So, I mean, are we just okay with that? Like, Amazon can just take all the money. And the most troubling part of the whole thing is that then these companies get so powerful, they're almost their own economy. They're like, they have more revenue than entire countries out there. And then they have an agenda. That's the worst part about it. Then they have an agenda.
I think it would be less troubling if they just stayed neutral, like you're talking about. I mean, personally, I wish my company had had a revenue stream that was bigger than a country. I don't care what country it is.
Like, I think Google would be ranked somewhere in the top, which we should Google this.
I like Google see how you put that. Yeah, because the only way to look it up is to fucking Google it.
Right, to Google it. They would be ranked somewhere in the top 20 countries in the world or something in terms of revenue. But yeah, we have to Google this. But at any rate, so then you've got Google, who, if you want to run a successful business, you have to play their game. You have to pay them thousands of dollars a month for your ads. You have to do SEO so that you rank at the top of Google.
Yeah.
So they're getting richer and richer and richer. And then they say, you know what? We're going to start filtering search results and just giving you what we want you to see.
Well, it's not even just the filtering of the search results, because that's part of their algorithm. They say they're trying to make it, a better experience for someone who's looking for your product, whether you would say it's a skateboard wheel or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just lost my train of thought.
What's Google's revenue? That's what we want to see. We want to see what's Google's revenue.
But going back to Amazon, I mean, I can understand if you're not hooked up with Amazon, but I'm sure there are a lot of companies out here that will be motherfucking us up and down for talking shit on Amazon because they have contracts with Amazon to provide thousands of whatever
and
products.
I think as it goes, Amazon has made a very nice marketplace, and there's a lot of small businesses.
$307 billion. So there are countries that don't have that much revenue.
Yeah, that's bigger than the GDPs of a lot of countries.
Yeah.
I'm certain. I mean, we're privileged to have been in the United States here, where we've always kind of been an economic powerhouse for our entire lifetimes, even though we're on the decline at the moment.
Yep.
Which is the most exciting thing about having a new administration that's so pro United States manufacturing.
Here we go. So those are all in trillions. So U.S. is 29 trillion. So Brazil's, and those are all pretty big ones. But like, I bet you if you start getting into some of the smaller countries, South America. Yeah, so there's tons of them that are below $25
the
billion.
majority of Africa, a lot of places in Asia, all of that stuff are all well below $300 billion.
Well, you figure there's the $250 to $500 billion range right there, and there's a whole bunch of that shade of blue on the map. So,
but yeah, I don't know. In an ideal world, I don't want Amazon. I don't want them to exist. Like in an ideal world, because basically all the revenue that's going to them could be going to small businesses.
Right. I mean, but that's the one that they're on the Walmart train too, because Walmart is that kind of the beginning of Amazon, because Walmart was the discount price place that had everything.
Right.
You go there, you can get anything you want at that store for the most part. I mean, they got however many 500,000, 750,000 different items inside of a Walmart supercenter. And I go back far enough to where there were no Walmart supercenters
before they started going after grocery stores.
But then you have Amazon come along, and they take Walmart to the 10th degree by not only having quite literally anything you can possibly want on Amazon. I mean, we order parts for our machines on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
If you have a part number, you just type it in and it finds it for you somewhere, and it gets it to you in 2 days.
You know what I do? I look up stuff on Amazon, I find out who makes it, and then I go to their website and buy it.
I've been doing that a lot more because it generally the cost is a little bit lower. Generally not a lot, a couple of bucks.
Right.
But if I can go straight to the producer of that item, I'll do that. Because we do that all the time where, if I can buy it locally, say, I ordered fuses off of Amazon that came in today only because I couldn't get them anywhere locally. They're just a weird one, and it's a pain in the butt to find them. But, something as simple as a fuse, the regular ones, I'll jump in my truck and go up to Fairview Hardware and just buy them. Yeah, they're 30 cents more a fuse. But I know Ken, the owner of Fairview Hardware, and he sponsors stuff at the school, and it's little things like that. That's why we go to local restaurants as much as we can. We support, even though maybe the service isn't as fast, but it's a local place.
You have to be willing to sacrifice a little. We're so addicted to the speed of things and to the cheapness of things. You have to be willing to make a little bit of a sacrifice.
Well,
I think that's probably
we're a dying
the
breed here. We're the pre-Amazon generation. Like, we remember.
I think that's probably
one
of
a store.
That's probably one of the worst side effects of Amazon is we live in a culture now where you can get pretty much anything in like 2 days. You need some weird widget. You need I don't know, whatever weird stuff you would buy, assless chaps or whatever the hell you buy, and you can find that in whatever color you want on Amazon. Yeah. And probably, I mean, not that I've Googled assless chaps a lot. I mean, a couple times probably. Just a couple times. Hey, a guy gets curious. But, I mean, you can find anything at all, and you can have it no more than, say, 4 days.
Right.
And I think it's a good thing and a bad thing, because now, actual manufacturing for real things, when people find out they might have to wait a week or two, it's like, no, yeah, someone has to have it ready to go. It has to be out there somewhere ready to go. And I think that a lot of the quality of the products that we've come to expect, we're willing to accept a little bit less quality to get it fast, which I don't know. I don't particularly agree with. I would rather have something nice and have to wait for it a little bit.
Right.
But
yeah, I mean, you can't blame people for thinking that way, but somehow we need a cultural shift where people buy in a way that aligns with their values. Because I don't think any of us do it. I mean, I try half-heartedly, but when I really, really want it now, I'm gonna go ahead and give that company that I know wants to fuck up the U.S. and fuck up my life, I'm still gonna give them my money.
Well, do you think that the potential price increase from tariffs could slow that monster down?
Yeah, I think so to some degree, but I think you're still not solving the problem of our addiction to convenience and the thing that's driving us to give our money to Google, Amazon, and these other giant conglomerates that really have the worst intentions.
Yeah, and you might be right. I just know that, from my research, the country as a whole, I don't know. I would love to see us go back to pushing hard to buy American-made again. And because by and large, American-made products are by far better quality than anything you'll find in China.
Right.
Made by some prison labor or whatever.
Yep.
I'd like to see steel and aluminum come back to the United States. That's one of the huge industries that China just destroyed with their no regulation, cheap labor, all that stuff. There was a time where the steel industry in this country employed like 750,000 people. And now, only because Trump was bringing steel back to the United States during his term, there's like 140,000 people.
Yeah.
It used to be where the
It
world...
was huge,
Yeah, it used to be where...
the hub.
Well, and I think he negotiated with American Steel, which I think is in Cleveland, or in the Cleveland area, and then they had a huge conglomerate with, I think it was a Japanese steel plant. This was during President Trump's first term, and that was a huge thing. They were pushing that to make the Rust Belt not the Rust Belt anymore. Let's get big steel manufacturing back here, and with steel manufacturing comes the semiconductor manufacturing, because you don't melt steel with coal or gas anymore. You use electricity to melt steel.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
It's amazing to watch.
It's a massive. They just pass a massive charge of electricity, and I don't know the ins and outs of it. I might be completely off base, but they use electricity just like when you weld something with a stick welder.
Yeah.
It melts the steel.
I didn't realize that, because it's just not even that long. I mean, just 5, 6, 7 years ago, we had Erie Coke here.
Yeah, and that's defunct now too.
Yeah,
and
but I think the push to get some commodities back in the United States, steel and aluminum, I think that's a massive thing. I mean, because when you look, if you ever want to go down that rabbit hole, if you look at the top 15 producers of steel in the whole world, 9 of the top 15 are Chinese companies. And there's one in the top 15 that is an American company, and it's this little tiny section on the bottom of this huge graph. And again, it's China being able, because they stole all that technology from us, and then they, again, there's no regulations. They can dump their fucking slag wherever the hell they want. They don't care about pollution in the air, none of that stuff. And you get a bunch of guys that are either prison labor working for free, or the lowest labor, which their minimum wage in China is only like $3.70 an hour.
Yeah.
And they get a bunch of those guys that are just trying to feed their families, and they make it for a fraction of the cost, and it's just unfair trade practices.
And that's the thing is, like, we like to harp on these, for example, the left was all about this minimum wage increase. Everyone should get paid at least $15 an hour and everything like that. But we don't care about the fact that we're buying all of our goods
from
a country that is treating their people like absolute garbage.
It's the tragic irony that people will fight and die on that hill for a higher minimum wage and better, conditions and all that stuff, which everyone should work in good conditions. But then they'll sit there and You know, look at our iPhones or whatever the hell that were made by more or less sweatshops in China for fractions, you know, of what it would cost to make in America. And they're like, well, it's convenient for me, so fuck them. But, you know, I don't know. It drives me absolutely nuts.
Well, you know, talking about the iPhone, I think, what is it, Foxconn is the place that makes most of the components for iPhones. It's in China. I don't know if it's in Shanghai or Beijing or whatever city it's in. And
USA.
it is such.
Did you see that they named a province USA so they could say "Made in USA"?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, real thing.
Perfect.
Real
But
thing.
but they, you know, the working conditions are so bad at Foxconn that people would actually jump out the windows of the building and commit suicide. So instead of improving the working conditions, they just installed nets that would catch the people.
Yeah.
And put them back
And
to
that's
work.
a true story.
It's true.
It's insane.
Joe Rogan talked about that on one of his podcasts, and it's absolutely insane. But the side effect of that is you buy the iPhone now in the United States for whatever it is, you know, $1,000 or whatever it is. If you were to buy that with the same components made United States, Great Britain, you know, the westernized nations, it costs you between $2,500 and $3,000.
Right.
And people want the cheaper goods.
Yeah.
They just are willing to put the blinders
It's like
on.
the blood diamonds. Everybody wants a blood diamond.
Yeah.
I want to know how many people jumped off a building for this phone.
Yeah. Yeah. How many provinces worth of people got killed just so they could mine these stupid diamonds?
Yeah, it's like values, guys. We have to start thinking about this stuff. So let's hit on the PA budget a little bit.
Do you really want to come down this rabbit hole?
I want because you know what? I'm sick of our state voting for people in leadership, our governors, our Senate. We have a couple good senators now, but people that are doing a terrible job. So the PA state economy over the past 10 years has grown approximately 1% per year. We've had some really down years. We've had some up years. To me, that's ridiculous. 1%. We're not even keeping up with inflation. So why is that? What are we doing? You know, and so I think it all comes back to investment. So we have our DCED, Department of Community and Economic Development. Their job is to grow the economy. They get a lot of funding to grow the economy. So if you gave me $50 million a year, and they get more than that, but if you gave me $50 million a year, and I come back to you with 1% growth on that money per year,
those people need fired.
What are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
You're going to fire me.
Yeah.
Well, but this is where we go back to government. There's no accountability, and there never has been.
Right.
It just keeps growing at the same rate with less results. I mean, the absolute perfect example of the way government runs things is the post office. You have the post office that sells a good. They ship letters, and they do other stuff too. But they have a federally mandated monopoly that if you're sending a letter, it has to be sent through the post office.
Yeah, you are not allowed by law to send letters through UPS or...
Really?
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't do it.
Unless it's like, what, a certified... You couldn't send like a certified letter? I don't know.
No, actual mail has to be sent through the post office.
So you have a monopoly over the entire population of the United States to send, you know, a piece of paper like this. If you're sending a piece of paper in an envelope, it has to go through the post office. And they lose money hand over fist every single year.
What does a stamp cost these days?
55 cents.
And how many...
I go back far enough, Nate. You know, and I'm a touch older than everyone else in this room, I think. I don't know how old Max is, but I bet I'm older than him too. I go back far enough to remember when stamps were 16 cents.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you could make money off of that business model.
Well, I know there was talk a little while ago where they were saying that, hey, the post office is just running at such a deficit, blah, blah, blah. And I want to say Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos were fighting over the rights to be able to buy it. Mm-hmm. To have a national network of trucks to be able to deliver whatever you wanted. That is that amount of infrastructure is just catastrophic. I mean, it's huge, huge. And I know, I think that ship has sailed now because you can't drive one single block in any city without running into a fucking Amazon truck,
right,
or an Amazon van or something like that. I mean, I can't imagine the infrastructure that Bezos had to put in to buy all those vehicles. But I will say, they're all American-made vehicles.
Oh,
so he's buying a bunch of American-made stuff. So good on Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Well, he's not driving around in a bunch of Nissans and stuff like that. I mean, they're Chevy vans or whatever. But
we see the trains go by every day by our shop that have, the container cars that just have the containers that came right off a ship somewhere that are moving, and half of the train, typically the containers are all Amazon branded containers.
I'd be curious to know how many letters can a standard United States Postal Service vehicle hold? Like, I'm just curious because, like, I want to know how much money is in that. 55 cents times what? 5,000 letters?
Well, but
it's got to be way more.
But we were talking about
they take them out in these big. I was up at the main post office, and you see them moving these giant rolling bins, like they look kind of like those laundry carts, like you see on spy movies, where they dump the guy in a laundry cart and throw him down. Like there's 40 of those, just full of these big, cloth bags full of letters that have been sorted to go to this place or that place. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands. So I would imagine that one vehicle, I assume they have them sorted for delivery, but if you packed it full, God, I would rough estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000 letters. I mean, you figure a letter is about 5 sheets of paper thick.
But even if you could only hold 5,000 of them, I mean, at 55 cents, what are you, like $3,000 worth of letters delivered in a day?
Yeah, there's $3,000 worth of postage. Yeah, on the letters that are in that thing.
You can make money doing that.
And
I would imagine.
Well, one would think, but then that goes back to efficiency, and we have stories. I send 20, 25 checks out a week, and invariably, once a week, one of those checks will get lost. It'll never get to where it went.
Right.
Where it was supposed to go,
or it'll get lost in the mail. We had some official correspondence that came in from one of the local offices out here, unemployment office, and the thing took so long to get here that by the time it got here, we had missed the date for the unemployment hearing. Like it took like 19 days to ship from Erie.
Down to Pittsburgh now.
Yeah. They ships from Erie.
If I sent you a letter, it would go down to Pittsburgh and then come back.
But it got lost in the mail or whatever for like 18 days or something.
Yeah, I got the letter the day of the hearing, and they gave us 17 days, and it took 17 days to get from Erie. Right, well, just a couple blocks up from where we're sitting right now, to my shop in Lake City, and I drove here in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but that's not even the worst of it. You think about the efficiency, where you just eat up money by being inefficient. My wife works for the Girard School District, so they do their stuff through the post office, and they have an account and everything, and they pay for their account, whatever it is, monthly or quarterly or whatever. They lost the check going from the school building that's 3 miles from the post office that they were going to pay for their postage at. They lost it.
Yeah, so the post office picked up the check, took it, and had to send it along to wherever you send stuff to pay at the post office, and the damn thing got lost in the mail. If that's not irony, I don't know what is.
To go from an address to the post office, it got lost.
Yeah,
like how in the hell does that happen? So you think about that, but then you upscale that to the whole country.
Well,
and
the amount of
efficiency, lose money. You just lose money hand over fist. And going back to the Pennsylvania budget, I think I touched on it right when we started talking. When you look at the third column here, and it's all in the red, where we're spending more than we have. Where does that money come from? It's either going to come from the federal government, which is taxes, or they're going to raise our taxes, which is taxes.
Right.
And probably both. It's been that way for years.
What line item on there would you like to pay for the least?
Well, so I've got this tablet, and I started writing stuff down, And I don't want to bash too many things, because the one that gets me, if you get into the education part of it, right?
Yeah.
And not that I'm not against public schools at all. And I think, we need to revamp our public education system, because we're not learning enough.
Right.
We're not competing on a global scale. But what I found in the education section, and I'm not going into anything for public education, I'm not going into anything for charter schools. Mike is a big charter school guy. We both had our kids in charter schools at one point, and the charter school education was excellent.
Job,
They were excellent.
Right.
And I know people who own charter schools, and they're finally loosening those regulations enough to where private charter schools can get funded, and that I think that's a great thing for the country.
Yeah, I
think it's a huge thing for the country. But
don't let a teachers union hear you say that.
But I was looking into why in the hell I'm going to put my cheaters on for this.
All right,
Nate.
I'm ready.
Because I wrote this down. Mike and I were going back and forth on this. So part of the Pennsylvania budget, and we're just talking Pennsylvania, so I don't know how much federally these places get, but in the line item, we're giving endowments to Penn State University, to Pitt University, University of Pittsburgh, to Temple, Lincoln University, Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology, which is a very small one compared to the other ones, and then the state system of higher education, right?
Okay.
So Penn State gets a little over $276 million out of the state budget.
Okay.
Pitt gets a little over, a lot over $155 million, about $155,298. Temple gets $158 million. Lincoln gets $20 million, and Thaddeus gets $22 million, right? So we're giving these endowments to universities that are charging for
20,
education.
30, 40, $50,000.
We'll get into that. We'll get into that. Don't worry, Nate. Just calm down.
Okay.
Calm down. So, whoa, big fella. Whoa, big fella. But then in addition to that, so we're giving all that money to those individual universities, and the state system is 14 colleges. That encompasses, the little colleges that are all over the state, like Edinburgh and Slippery Rock, and a bunch of those. But then there's also $573.5 million for higher education assistance. So you roll all those numbers together, because all of that assistance goes to these colleges too, and you're looking at $1.8 billion.
$1.8 billion that
so
go
you look at
basically
that,
just to run the place.
Now, I realize that the higher education assistance isn't just earmarked for those 5 that I talked about in the state system, but a lot of it's going to go to those ones because they're in the state. You get better grants if you're going to schools within your own state.
Right.
If it's funded by Pennsylvania, you should be going somewhere in Pennsylvania. That's perfectly legitimate.
Sure.
And the higher education assistance could be for technical colleges, could be for smaller colleges, could be for private colleges, because that's just the way it works. It's grants and scholarships and things like that. But then you look at the tuition for the schools that I mentioned, and you're looking at like Penn State. It's almost $20,000 a year to go to Penn State, and that's if you live here. It's more if you don't live here and you come from out of state to go there.
Right.
And $21,000 to go to Pitt, and I'm just going the in-state ones because the out-of-states are almost
way
double.
More.
They're almost double the in-state. Temple's $21,000, Lincoln's $11,000, almost $12,000. The technical college is $8,400 to go there for a semester, right? Edinburgh, which is the state system, is almost $10,000 to go there. And I didn't look up all 14 of the state system of higher education.
Get your facts straight.
Well, I can assume that they're probably all about the same, because they're the same types of colleges. But then you think about so they're getting all this revenue from the state budget. Then they're getting revenue from the people to send their kids there. And then, God forbid, if you live on campus, a lot of these places almost double for housing and meals to live on campus. Right? So they're bringing in all this revenue. And yet we hear about the declining graduation rates and people who do graduate with degrees that you can't use for anything.
Right.
You invariably see
we've had
these poor kids who come out of college with stars in their eyes, and they got their degree in whatever their degree is, right? And they're working at Walmart.
Yeah, carrying around $150,000 in debt. Because I did a deep dive on that when Steve started talking about it, because I don't know. I guess I like being angry. And, there's around 87,000 people enrolled in Penn State.
Okay.
So you take that
times
and you
20.
multiply it out and add in all the state, revenue and stuff like that they get, just that we see on paper. That doesn't count any federal, doesn't count the meal plans and stuff like that, because I assume that's a whole separate thing, because they do have to provide meals. And it ends up where Penn State gets just the tiniest bit shy of $2 billion.
Oh, my God.
I mean, my math could be wrong. I'm pretty dumb, but I did it twice. So when you look at that type of endowment for a college, and it is cheaper to go to Penn State. It is a state college, so it is less expensive to go there than if you went to, Harvard or Dartmouth or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine where $2 billion goes.
Neither can I.
And it's over budget every year. How much was it over budget?
Oh, I didn't even write that
in
down.
The current one.
Yeah.
Like it's over budget every single year, where they start looking for, the state schools look for money, and PA has to cough up some more money for them.
Not only are they not able to work with the $2 billion that they get, but they're not producing the workforce that we need.
Well, yeah, I mean, just some of my recent brushes with college tuition and stuff like that in my family is you're not even required to pick a major for the first 2 years.
Right.
Since because you have to
I think that's
you have to take nearly 2 years worth of general education credits and stuff like
general brainwashing credits.
Yeah.
Because I went to college. I'll tell you what, man, it made me sick.
Well, and then the offshoot of that, going back to where you were at, like job creation in the Pennsylvania budget. So there's a couple lines on there, marketing to attract businesses. Right? I think that would be a big thing. You want to attract businesses.
Sure.
You have jobs in Pennsylvania.
Right.
$2 million.
Yeah.
$2 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Which doesn't do anything, obviously.
The PA First program is on there. I looked this one up. It's a program to develop, workforce competencies and stuff like that. $38 million. Okay, a nice chunk. Now, I don't know any businesses that have benefited from that program. I can imagine there are some. I just don't know of any of them.
No.
Manufacturing PA, another thing to stimulate manufacturing in Pennsylvania, is $13 million. Since we're talking about manufacturing, that seems like a drip in the bucket next to the $1.8 billion for higher education.
If you look at it, okay. So we have the PA Department of Agriculture, right? Roughly, what is agriculture contribute to the PA economy? I think it's between 1 and 2%. Manufacturing, on the other hand, is the largest standalone contributor to the PA economy. I mean, that's where we make our money. And so I always ask the question, why don't we have a Department of Manufacturing?
Yeah. Well, and you would imagine that since manufacturing is such a linchpin to the Pennsylvania economy, why in the hell don't we spend some more money to try to get some more manufacturers in here?
Right.
Or better yet, and this is crazy, so you're going to have to stay seated for this one, maybe help the existing manufacturers grow.
Right. Drive business
that
to
would
them.
be
amazing. And
this
is the message I preach. I've sat down with Dan Laughlin a couple years ago, and he had some interest in it, but it didn't really go any further than that. But I created a website called Tri-State Manufacturers, and the basic idea is leverage this tool so that, number one, manufacturers in PA can work with each other. They can identify suppliers of, if they're looking for an ISO certified machine shop that has 20 employees, you can find it on Tri-State Manufacturers. But then leverage this platform, use advertising and search engine optimization so that when people are Googling ISO certified machine shops, they find this website, they find PA manufacturers, and they can hire them. They can submit an RFQ. If you got some of this state budget behind a program like this, and we're actually using tax dollars to advertise this on a global scale, we would drive billions and billions and billions of dollars into the PA economy. But instead, what are we doing?
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing, Nate.
Oh yeah,
I'm glad you asked.
Glad you asked.
Glad you asked.
It's all in the numbers, bud.
So these 4 items that I had here to for jobs and business, and I'm sure there's a couple smaller ones out there, or they're parts of other programs in here, because these are very large subjects that are on the lines here. I'm sure there's a ton of shit within all these other things. So we're looking at jobs and business development somewhere around $68 million. So we can assume that's probably a little bit higher because there's some of it that's tied into the other departments and the other line items in the budget here.
Right.
Marketing to attract tourism. Totally opposite of manufacturing and workforce development is $55 million, almost $56 million.
$55 million.
To push tourism to Pennsylvania. Now I realize that there's places in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of tourist-friendly spots. There's all kinds of, ski slopes and water parks and, historical stuff that's happened here in Pennsylvania. I mean, Philadelphia itself has enough history. It's the founding area of the whole United States. I mean, that's where everything started, was Philadelphia. And then there's
But we're not going to really, the potential isn't there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think we're maxed out on our tourism capacity.
Well, I mean, and the thing about it is,
Prescott's nice.
Erie's probably the tourism gem of
Sarasota.
Erie's probably the tourism gem of Pennsylvania because of the beachfront and because of the fishing and the sportsmen love the Erie area for hunting and fishing and stuff like that.
Yeah, steelhead.
And
delicious.
But you're not going to drive a massive amount of tourism here. It's not going to be.
You'd be lucky to break even.
It's not going to be the linchpin of the Pennsylvania economy like agriculture or manufacturing.
Well, and the thing is, tourism doesn't generate nearly as many jobs as manufacturing would. Right. Yes, I mean you can open up another tourist spot that'll employ 3 or 4 people to hand out kayaks so you can go down the river.
Yeah, but it's not going to be a 300-person manufacturing facility.
Exactly. Like you could get something started up here to, produce some type of object. We're in the heart of, hardwood lumber country. We're, just north of what used to be the heart of steel country. Yeah. I mean, the potential for growth in manufacturing is so huge if they would just invest in it.
Right.
Start making some shit, offer some, whatever you have to offer to get, someplace to, open up. We talked about the Coke plant. How many people did that employ? 2,500 people, something like that.
Quite a few. I don't remember. Yeah,
gone. General,
which I guess that's a technology change. It sounds like more than anything.
Yeah, General Electric used to be 37,000 people.
Well, the entire town of Harbor Creek.
Thank you.
Came is because of General Electric and all of the businesses that are around there. You've got all the Air Gas is right over there, Erie Bearings right over there. All these places that would go and work on the machines at General Electric. The doctor's offices that popped up to take care of people at General Electric. All the housing that went in over there, restaurants, bars, everything that went in around the plant when it was at full capacity, producing locomotives, and God knows how many things that GE developed in their heyday. Because General Electric is one of the first companies in the whole United States, especially during the Industrial Revolution when we started harnessing electricity. They were enormous. I mean, they're still gigantic as companies go, but definitely not where they were.
They're gigantic here.
Right. They're not where they were.
Right. So the bottom line is, we're putting this little half-hearted amount of money towards manufacturing.
Yeah, building real jobs and real, building real money in the community.
Right.
Because let's face it, manufacturing equals jobs. It just does. To do anything manufacturing-wise takes a lot of people.
Well, and if you think
anyone who's ever worked at a machine shop or anything like that, you have to have a lot of people to make this thing run smooth. And spending a bunch of money to get people to come here for tourism is all well and good. I mean, I like having influxes of money from other states. That's always a good thing. People visit here from other states, spend their Tennessee dollars in Erie and whatever, and infuse a little bit of capital. That's always really nice. I totally get that. But I would much rather have PA manufacturing selling stuff all over the country and having the whole country sending their money to Pennsylvania.
Right.
I mean, again,
it's
not a super smart guy, but it seems like that would produce a lot better results.
But all of these organizations, and I'm not even going to call any of them out, But these organizations that are kind of these subsidiaries of the DCED, the ones that are into the economic development and funding things and stuff, they always have these, let's make us a tourist town. Let's attract, people that want to listen. We're, like I said, we're maxed out. It's like, girl dyeing her hair pink. Your hair's not naturally pink, right? That's just not who you are. You might want to try to look like something different. Listen, we're a manufacturing town. That's what's going to make us successful. And what I would love to see is for PA to drive towards creating some real innovation that all of our manufacturers can work on.
Yeah.
And my idea is transportation. I think transportation is, every time I'm driving down to Pittsburgh, I think to myself, we've been doing this same thing for 100 years. It hasn't changed. The body styles have changed, but we're still rolling around on rubber tires, and it takes a long time. It's annoying. Let's develop a system. Let's test it out in PA. And my idea is tubes. Okay? So you go to the bank, you put your money in the slot, and you push the button. It is the most efficient form of transportation. Okay? It's in a closed system. A little bit of energy can make this capsule go very fast to its endpoint. So we use the existing right-of-ways of the highways. And I know I'm not the first person to think about this. I feel like I have some interesting twists on it. But anyways, you use the existing right-of-ways of highways. And you build a tube. You get down to Pittsburgh in 10 minutes.
Well, they did talk for a while about putting in one of those, like, the mag trains or whatever, the bullet trains.
Right.
That it was just going to be like a three-way system where it went from Pittsburgh to Erie to Cleveland to Buffalo.
Yeah.
And those things go, I think, 600 miles an hour or something like that. So you could feasibly catch the bullet train in the morning in Erie at 7 o'clock, be in Pittsburgh at 7:20.
Right.
And work in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Which would be awesome.
But how much energy does that take? You know what I'm saying?
Haven't they been trying to do a bullet train like that in California between San Francisco and San Diego or something for like
they'll never get it
35 years? They spent, like $80 billion or something, and they don't even have a foot of track laid yet.
They'll probably just like give free rides to homeless people, and it won't make any money.
Yeah.
So they can.
Well, that's what they
zoom
need.
Up and
they need to start like those guide services like they have at the Grand Canyon, where you just go and you sit on someone's donkey and they just give you a ride on the back of the donkey to your job. I think that'd be cheap. Do rickshaws, where you just jump in the back and someone hoofs it out and takes you to where you're going. Hey, perfectly efficient. There's no carbon footprint.
I don't know what the innovation is for Pennsylvania, but I think the first innovation should just be making stuff here again.
Yeah.
And not just Pennsylvania, the whole damn country. And that's I think the most exciting thing about the potential new administration here, is that they're really like dead set on American manufacturing.
Right.
And that's where we go back to the tariffs again.
Yeah, it'll generate a shitload of jobs.
Level the playing field, and then you bring in tariff revenue, lower tax revenue on American citizens, and then make the government more efficient by cutting out stuff that it shouldn't have its fingers in.
Right.
Or
Doge.
Yeah. Well, that I think that's probably the most exciting thing for any of us who grew up long enough ago to where politicians used to run on cutting government spending.
Yeah, every politician, no new taxes. We're going to cut government spending. You're going to
get government off
your
your
money.
back.
No new taxes.
Right.
Yeah, that's gone. No one says that anymore.
How about we get rid of old taxes? Yeah, I'm super excited about that. And I mean, if they do half of the stuff that they're saying they're going to do, I think we're going to be in great shape. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think we can really afford to cut all those IRS agents?
No, well, hey, you never know. Well, there are some things that need cut. Steve was talking about the Festivus last time we did this, and you brought a whole bunch of that stuff, right?
Right here.
And there's all these pages of these, and you'll read it and you'll think it's satire. You'll be like, we really paid for that? What was the one? It was like a $2.5 million study where they had doctors feeding booze to rats.
Was it booze and cocaine?
to see the effects.
No. I wrote this one down. Hold on. I wrote this one down. I think I even page marked it. I page marked some good ones if we were going to talk about this, because I think that the Department of Government Efficiency, the potential Department of Government Efficiency, could be a massive thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, because at some point we have to acknowledge as a people, as a country, not as the right and the left and the independents, as the people, that we are fast on the track to where interest on our debt is the biggest line item in our budget. Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning of the end right there. Yeah. Is when if we get to that point, and I think it's supposed to happen in 2028 or 2029, where our interest will be the biggest line item on our budget. It'll be bigger than the Department of Defense. It'll be bigger than Medicare, bigger than Social Security. It'll be the biggest expense on there. And it was 2023. It was last year's in the Festivus report that Rand Paul puts out every year, right around Festivus time. What is that, December 21st or whatever, where they do Festivus for the rest of us?
Right.
The interest on the debt last year was $659 billion.
Wow.
$659 billion on interest. That was the interest payment.
Wow.
So you think about that. $659 billion that's just gone. So we're borrowing money to pay interest, to pay more interest on the money that we borrowed to pay the interest from the year before, because nobody thinks that the spending is out of control. Like everything is justified, so we can't, and we're reaching a point where how much more can you tax?
Yeah.
And then you look at some of the stuff some of the crap, the shit that's in here.
Pick one. I want to hear a crazy one.
Yeah, give me a good one.
Pick a crazy one.
Okay.
Because I want to hear it, because he obviously has a passion for this stuff, and he'll tell me some of these things. I'm like, that's got to be fucking. That's not right.
So
that can't be right.
I mean, there's only there's only 25, 30 items per year that he highlights, because you highlight hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things.
Sure.
Right. So let me see. So I'll open up right here. 2021, right at peak of the pandemic. So we were giving out money left and right, relief funds, whether it's PPP or school funding, stuff like that.
Was it really a pandemic though?
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into that. I want to stay on the waist here. I want to stay on the waist because I have all kinds of thoughts about that too, which will piss some people off, and a lot of people will agree with them, especially given the data that we have now.
Right.
On
the data that I was writing.
Which is what we were all saying at the time.
Yeah. But and these are small numbers compared to the $659 billion that I just talked about. So This is a drip in the bucket. But this is the leaks in the dam, right? It starts with $1.
Yep.
Then it turns into $5. Then it turns into $100. Then it turns into 1,000 or 100,000 or $1 million. Right. Then all of a sudden you're at $1 billion. Just as we just let all this shit go. Baltimore School District received $1.27 million in COVID relief funds for students who weren't actually enrolled. Again, inefficiency. Yep. We just did it. We just sent the money, boom, it's spent, gone, and those were for students that weren't ever there. Poof.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what could your business do with $1.2 million?
A lot.
Could do a lot.
Yeah, a small business looks at that and goes, "My God, that's a catastrophic amount of money. That would change the whole way my business goes." Mm-hmm. And to the government, that's like you throwing a $5 bill on the table.
What's the improper storage one?
Oh, we'll get to that. That's a couple years down the road. Go back to this one here. USAID. This is a United States-based a department of the government. I think it's part of the Department of Agriculture, where we help people with agriculture in their countries. So we installed irrigation systems to Afghan farmers, right? We're trying to help them get their agriculture off the ground. So we built $87.9 million worth of irrigation systems for Afghan farmers, and only 2.5% of those are actually being used now.
So $90 million. Gone.
Poof.
Yeah.
Gone.
And I didn't go far enough down the rabbit hole to figure out if we bought all the stuff to make those irrigation systems here, or if we bought it from China.
Oh yeah.
That's probably the rub, is we bought it all from China.
Jeez.
To then install it to where they don't use it.
So as we continue down our rabbit hole, let me see what's the next one I wrote down. This was one that's particularly important to Mike because Mike is a big comic book fan, and we actually did a report. The National Institute of Science funded a study. Okay. It only was 118 grand, almost 119 grand for this study, but the study was to figure out when Thanos put on the Infinity Gauntlet. He put it on his left hand, right? It was on his left hand. Yeah, it was on his left hand. So where if he could actually make the snap sound with the gauntlet on, because the gauntlet's made of metal.
Okay.
And they determined that he couldn't have actually snapped his fingers because there wouldn't have been enough friction from the metal to snap his fingers.
$119,000, government subsidized.
I have to know more about this. That doesn't even. How do you apply for this money? Like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I will happily feed, government supplied cocaine to birds to see if it makes them fuck more.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
I'll happily run these studies. Like, hey, if you drink a lot, what happens? I'll sign up for that study today. Effects of alcoholism on a fat balding guy.
Yeah. So government spent more than 1.1 million getting mice drunk to study the effects of alcoholism and the after effects of alcoholism
in mice.
You could do that. You could do that on a college campus. Double up the. You're already funding the colleges.
Yeah, I think
we
we're already double up.
We could already double up those.
Of alcohol on.
I mean, the last time I checked, I know what the effects of alcohol are, especially the after effects.
And we also know what the long-term effects of it are.
But not in mice. So 1.1 million. Yeah. Cough up those tax dollars, bud.
We just have to be prepared in case mice start to develop alcoholism.
Yep.
I'm trying to find because I thought I had it marked here. Oh, this one's a good one for you. Super Bowl ads. We brought those up earlier. 2022. The federal government spent $2.5 million on a Super Bowl ad. It was 30 seconds. So it's like $83,000 a second.
Right.
To promote the census. That's
I feel like I remember seeing
I saw this ad.
There was a little bit of outrage about how much they spent on it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a great look for the government to spend that. Yeah, here it is. National Science Fund spent $118,971 to study if Thanos could snap his fingers in real life.
That doesn't even make sense.
Imagine presenting that, asking for that grant.
You
say, hey, we really want to do this study. We need about $120,000 to really see if this fake person with a fake amount of strength who can beat the shit out of the Hulk, who is a fake being, if they put on a fake gauntlet made from a fictional metal with magic stones in it, if you could create enough friction with your super strength to make a snapping noise, I think people are going to love this. I want 120 grand.
The study,
what a bunch of bullshit.
So here's the findings, Nate, because I know you're concerned now.
Yeah.
And I can leave this binder with you so you could read these.
Yeah.
I feel like you and Michelle could really get a kick out of some of these.
Just make sure you have booze around.
To post these.
The study ultimately determined wearing metal gloves while attempting to snap does not generate enough friction between one's fingers to successfully create a snap.
Yeah.
So
we did it. Especially since the guy can reach his hand up and pull a fucking moon out of orbit in whatever
we didn't do a study to see if he could do that though.
What a bunch of bullshit.
So we probably should have done that too.
But hey, $120,000.
I have to find out more about that. I just can't even imagine how that came to be.
Well, and then in the 2023 report, I already brought up the interest on the debt. He's got some nice graphs right here on this for you. Like I said, you can read these. I'll leave this with you.
Yes.
I'll leave this with you. I used up a little bit of paper, maybe kill
a part
of it.
Maybe I can put a link. Can we link to this stuff?
Yeah, I'll get the website because it's
comments?
on. It's Rand Paul. Rand Paul, I think.
Okay.
Has his own website. But this is for you, Nate, because I know you were a Marine. This is the one that Mike really liked. Okay. So, as part of our military, we maintain our military vehicles and things, right? So we need to replace transmissions. We need to replace treads on tanks and other military vehicles. We need to replace engines, right? So $89 million worth of engines were ruined because we stored them outside before we actually put them in the vehicles. So
wow.
$89 million. Gone.
And did anybody, did anybody get any sort of a penalty for
this?
It
doesn't seem that we did, because apparently the code to properly store engines was missing on their arrival. So instead of putting the engines in a covered shed, they were left outside. $1.1 million per engine.
So we're hiring some really bright
people.
Yeah,
we got some good ones over there.
Yeah.
Some good ones over there. Some true automatons that didn't say, hey, man.
Wasn't in my general orders.
I don't think these should be out in the rain, so nobody could just say that like we would. Right. If you spend $1 million on an engine for your whatever, then
I would take very good care of it.
Yeah, I think we would take care of it.
Well, the only way to store an engine is it has to develop a natural patina.
Right.
From being stored outside. Without the natural patina, the engine block doesn't really shine how it should. Everyone knows that. This is common knowledge, man.
So in 2023, the Department of Defense Inspector General, you're aware of who that is, being in the military before. I didn't know, so I had to look it up. But now I know. The U.S. Army improperly stored 135 hydraulic transmissions, and they have the item number on here, valued at $12.6 million. They stored them outside. Despite the requirements to be stored in a shed, over 1,000 officials told the IG they simply didn't have room in the shed. So they left them outside.
Well, couldn't you spend maybe another, $50,000
to build a shed? Yeah, like you could call Morton Buildings, and they'll have that shed up in 2 days. We had an incident on our farm years back where the barn was destroyed. And we, when we replaced the barn, Morton Buildings came out. They showed up the first day, dropped off all the stuff for the building. The second day, they had the entire frame up. The third day, it was done, and they left. So I would think that
we could
have got,
or at least get a tarp or something.
Yeah,
but I mean, just those two items are $100 million.
And then
$100 million.
Here you go. And then Nate, because again, I know that at some point in your life you're going to own a tank. So you're going to need to know this.
Yep.
And you're allowed to own a tank. I looked this up. You actually are allowed to own it. You just can't
buy the ammo.
You can't buy the ammo for it. You can't buy the heavy artillery exploding rounds.
But you can get them from Amazon. See how we tied that back in? See, that's brilliant right there.
Recall.
So the Department of Defense Inspector General, again, cataloged 117,534 vehicular track shoes, the tracks that go on tanks and the half tracks and stuff, valued at $68.29 million, left outside in the open air. They were not covered or stored properly at all. Over 1,000 military officials did not follow the military's own guidance on storage. Scrap.
How many million was that?
68. Just 68 million.
So now we're up to 160 million.
Wow.
160 million just turning good stuff into scrap.
So this, I mean, that I talked about, and the last one of the 3 from each year that I'm going to highlight, and like I said, there's 25, 30 of them for every year. Improper payments, where the government,
where do you hear this?
we pay, the federal government pays millions and millions and millions of payments, whether it's through Medicare, Medicaid, pandemic unemployment assistance, earned income tax credits, paycheck protection programs, loan guarantee purchases, opportunity tax credits, VA purchasing, all kinds of these things.
Yep.
So improper payments in 2023 were valued at $236 billion.
$236 billion just paid out to people that weren't supposed to get it. Gone.
Yeah, whether it was individuals or businesses or entities, whatever.
Do you think they go back and try to get that back?
And the thing is, they were happy that it was this much because it was 10 million lower than the year before.
Oh.
So it was.
Kudos,
I guess it was an improvement. It was an improvement of 8% or whatever it is.
Oh my God!
And
the chart says it's green.
But going back to government efficiency, it's this type of shit.
Yeah.
That we just let go on. And nobody ever tracks down or tries to reduce it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's almost
because
like
to track it down means you have to admit it happened.
It's like the mistakes our government makes, they just go away. Like people will be like, "Oh, that's terrible," and then it's just nobody ever pays a penalty for it. It's like even these assassination attempts. They were in the news for like a week, and it's like, yeah. We never found anything out about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Well, we killed the guy who shot at him the first time, so that's over.
Right.
Let's not dig too deep. And I wonder if that's going to be reopened when he takes office.
I hope so.
To get to the bottom of some of this crap.
Yep.
And it just seems like efficiency and justice are just out the window.
Right.
With the way the government has been run the last.
It needs to come back, man.
For a long time, and I hope that that's something that will change. Maybe. Yep. I mean, a man can hope, I suppose. Yep. But then you go back to where we were going with the tariffs and everything. So you use the tariffs to offset tax cuts and make the budget balance, and then you start making the government efficient to cut costs and cut spending, and then you pay the debt down. Right. And when we get closer to being in the black, or actually being in the black, where if you get on the debt clock, there's a great website.
Yeah, I've seen
the usdebtclock.org,
unbelievable,
where you can see the spending in real time and where it's all allocated. And I'm sure it's not 100% accurate, but it's going to be pretty damn accurate.
Right.
Where we're spending, in the time that we did this podcast, what we've been going for about an hour now.
We're over an hour.
Over an hour. I mean, you figure we're spending as a government about $85,000, $86,000 a second. So think about that. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. There's 60 seconds per minute. The numbers get out of hand really, really damn fast.
Right.
Yeah. And Elon Musk is out there going, we're spending too much money. This is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Well, and anyone who thinks it is just insane.
Well, and I think the thing that he said that should ring home with every American, every single taxpayer should understand that any dollar that the government spends, no matter what the program is, any dollar is just tax. It's just tax.
It is.
It's some form of taking it from someone who earned it. And that's simply how it is.
Right.
And there are things that we can't do without. We're not going to get rid of our army, right? We're not getting rid of our military. I think that's a perfectly legitimate spend, is the military.
Yep.
We're not going to stop funding infrastructure. We're not going to stop helping people who need help with, health care, government assistance for things. But I think we need to go back to it being called government assistance, not dependence. We need to work to get people, on their own 2 feet and financially independent, because being financially independent feels way better than being dependent on somebody else for your entire way of life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy how some of these dependent situations, even worse than the taxes that go into it, cause even more harm to businesses. For example, when they extended the unemployment benefits throughout COVID, all of a sudden employers are seeing people show up to a job for a day and then leaving. Or they would see this huge influx of people applying to the job, and then they would have to spend their time interviewing them and all that, and then they would never hear from them again.
Yeah, because they just had to show that they were looking.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, the worst example of that, I worked in retail for a very long time, and the requirements to stay on assistance of any type was that you had to show that you were actively looking for a job, right? They had to go out and they had a form that you had to have, 7 people sign that you were looking for a job. Right. And these people would walk into a place, find the first cashier or employee and say, "Hey, are you hiring?"
It's such
No, we're not. And then, well, can you sign this? I'm just, doing this for my caseworker. And, just a cashier or somebody would sign it.
Yeah.
And at least, they started to change that, where you had to show that you filled an application out, and that business is legitimate.
But they don't have a job. They have time to do that.
They have all kinds of time to do stuff like that.
Well, it got to a point where when they would show up, because we needed help for a long time, and it was very difficult to find anyone. And when people would show up and say, "Hey, are you guys hiring?" We go, "Yeah, can you start right now?" "Oh, yeah, let me go out. What do you do here?" Yeah. If you want to start, we can start you right now. Yeah. Let me go out to my truck. Yeah, gone.
Oh,
gone. Like, yeah, I'll put you to work right now. And nope, they're not looking for actual work.
That's a very funny strategy, but yeah, I mean, that would definitely weed people out pretty quick. So we're gonna have to wrap up here, but last words. if we could do one thing to fix this country and get us heading the right path,
oh God,
what's it gonna be?
Well, I think we need to have a focus on making stuff here. We've become very dependent on pretty much every other country for everything.
I agree.
You know, and if we're not going to make things here and we're going to constantly have this giant fire hose of cash that just sprinkles the whole world with all of our money, because I mean, we do want, you know, a global economy is healthy, you know, because I don't want to, you know, I'm not trying to ruin the whole global economy with it. But at the same time, there was a time not that long ago, you know, back in the 50s and 60s, where when anyone wanted anything, they came to the United States. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that going back to that is possible or even preferable, but, you know, I think that, you know, having a very strong, robust manufacturing sector, having a control on commodities and stuff like that, like sugar and lumber and steel and aluminum, stuff like that is very doable in this country. I mean, we're already the breadbasket of the world. I mean, we make, you know, I think that it should be something that we strive for, where we stop sending our food to other countries as long as there is one starving person in the United States. We're not doing our jobs at all. Mm-hmm. Like, our elected leaders aren't doing their jobs at all if there is one hungry person in this country. And, you know, I think having a robust manufacturing, you know, presence in every state, you know, making anything and everything, mm-hmm. you know, but particularly the steel and aluminum, you know, we have to have that back, right. You know, and, you know, controlling energy costs would be really, really nice. Drilling our own oil wells and stop being completely dependent on foreign oil for every single thing. And again, that goes back to regulation for that stuff too, where in the United States, regulation for oil and gas drilling and all. I mean, look, you say the word fracking anywhere, and half the people in the room will want to stone you to death.
It's such a bad sound.
It's a terrible word. But the thing is, it's how you get that stuff. Yeah. And, you know, without, you know, being able to control energy costs, without being able to generate real good paying jobs, not more fucking government jobs like Obama did, where he generated hundreds of thousands of government jobs, which is a net negative for the country. Right. Every dollar paid to a government employee is a tax dollar. Right. Yeah. You know,
they're not value producing jobs.
Yeah, they're not producing any value.
Stealing jobs.
And, you know, I think that with the right, you know, you know, stimulus and stuff like that, you know, we got a lot of smart people in this country, you know, to be able to, you know, make new things and develop new technologies and stuff like that. Yep. And I think we're leaving all that by the wayside because it's just, for now, just easier to let someone else do it. Right. Well, the gravy train's coming to an end, man. Yeah. You know, where, you know, at some point, even right now, the idea of not being able to import as much stuff from China has people quaking in their fucking boots. Mm-hmm. Oh, without being able to get stuff from China, what are we going to do?
Meanwhile, the prices for everything have gone up by 30, 40%.
Yeah, the price for everything are already way up. You know, but the fact that we are that dependent on another country should scare people.
Yeah, I agree.
It really, really should.
I agree. What about you, Steve? One thing.
Well, again, the manufacturing is probably the biggest thing. But just getting government away from people and letting people do their thing. Mm-hmm. That's what turned this whole country around and made it into the economic powerhouse that it was, starting in the, you know, way back in the 20s. Yeah. You know, it was build it here. We built great big things. We always had time for arts and entertainment and music and all these we would consider soft things. But at the same time, we were building the biggest buildings in the world. We're building great bridges that are still standing today. Yep. You know, we did all of these monumental things, and now all we try to do is tear those things apart, and like not physically tear them down, but how they were built. You know, what was the country like back then? All these things happened back then historically that were bad, and we seem to be in a mode where all we want to do is self-flagellate ourselves for doing all of these great things that other countries are doing now.
Mm-hmm.
China just built the biggest dam, I think that Three Gorges Dam is the biggest structure that's ever been built.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's monumental how big the Three Gorges Dam is. You should look at it. It is absolutely massive.
Wow.
I think it's the biggest structure ever built. Yep. It dwarfs anything that was ever built previously. It's so massive.
Yep.
And they did that for hydroelectric power and water. Mm-hmm. Just like every dam. That's why Hoover was built, to provide water to a desert.
Right.
That now Lake Mead is behind Hoover Dam, and it gives water to Northern California, where all of the almonds and stuff grow. Mm-hmm. So they're doing the same thing that we did just 100 years later. Mm-hmm. And now all we're doing is tearing ourselves down for doing those things, when we should still be doing those things. We should still be sending people into space. We should still be discovering things. We should still and doing that stuff here.
Yeah, it seems like there's no appetite for these big innovations.
Right, not anymore. At least not here.
It's because everybody's too distracted.
Right,
social media, sports gambling.
Well, yeah, that seems to be the biggest growing industry right now is gambling.
Oh, it's everywhere.
But doing these great things that people will look back in history on, like look at the moon landing. There's a large section of the country that believes we never went to the moon, when we have people that went to the fucking moon still, that will tell you what it was like to be on the moon.
Some of them are pretty ambiguous in their answers. I think it was
between that and you have a section of people, and I think this goes back to the poor education, that still believe the Earth is flat, even though we have pictures.
That's a weird one.
Even though we have pictures of the Earth,
like we have a fucking
space.
space station orbiting the fucking planet right now.
I'm a sucker for a good conspiracy, and I was running at Asbury Woods. I'm gonna make the story quick. I was running at Asbury Woods on a trail, and somebody had spray painted on the trees. One tree said research, the next one said flat, and the next one said Earth. And I was like, this must be some sort of a weird group. They just named themselves Flat Earth or something weird. I Googled it, and it was actually a group of people that believe the Earth is flat. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to give them a chance. And
Don't go down that rabbit hole, Nate.
Started reading their stuff,
Oh my
and
God.
I was like, this is nuts.
Go ahead and laugh, Max.
Did they think that somehow, somewhere, that there is some fucking ice wall at the edge of the Earth?
Yeah.
That if you climb over the fucking ice wall, you're gonna fall into space.
Yep.
The lunacy of that is so
insane.
It's
crazy. Yeah, that's one conspiracy theory I can't buy into.
No, you know what segment of the population there are no flat earthers? Pilots. A pilot who has to fly from here to China and then back around the fucking Earth to get back to here has never once seen the fucking ice wall. You guys are morons. What the fuck?
So for me, the one thing is, and I'm talking specifically to our state, because I feel like we need to start acting like winners here if we want to be successful as a state and as a region.
We'll go back to it. The whole fucking point of the country started here.
Right.
It started, 400 miles away? Is it 400 miles to Philadelphia? Somewhere right about that?
Yeah, it's like five and a half hours, something like that.
The whole fucking country started here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole country that a large section of the population is trying to tear down. So we should be winning in this fucking state.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry to drop. You finally got me on the F-bomb train, Nate.
No,
here we go. Here we go.
It means it matters. But no, start treating manufacturing like the golden egg that it is in this state, and quit trying to be a tourist town or a tourist state. We're not that. Start treating manufacturing like what it is. It's the staple of the economy. Start funding programs to make it successful. Start funding programs to drive business to PA manufacturers, and quit taxing the crap out of them. Quit sending OSHA in to find them $10,000, $15,000. Quit doing that stuff. That's my one thing.
Yeah.
Well, and you're completely on point with that, especially being a manufacturer. And the point of this whole podcast is to help manufacturers and give insight to manufacturers. And again, the OSHA goes back to the government regulations, and the OSHA has their spot. They do. Employee safety is a gigantic thing. And when, God forbid, an employee does get hurt at a place, and hopefully not too bad, there should be an investigation to make sure that business is
Sure.
is a safe place for people to work, and I'm completely on board with that.
Yep.
Completely on board with that. But when you give them the power to just show up
400
and
pages,
check.
400 pages. I think it was 400 pages of regulation. Might be 6.
Oh yeah.
But it's insane.
And it's something on
it gives
quite
them excuses to find
it's
people.
something on quite literally anything you can possibly think of.
Right.
And it's not just manufacturers. Retailers get hit by OSHA too. Every business will get hit by them in one form or another because a restaurant, say, doesn't have to worry about OSHA so much, but they have to worry about the Department of Health,
right,
which is the same thing, just a different arm,
right,
of that type of enforcement. But it sucks having that sword dangling over your head. Mm-hmm. And is the thread holding that sword thick today? Like it's not going to come down on you, or is it ready to break?
Right. Well, at the end of the day, it's just another tax.
Yep.
It's just another tax.
And when other countries don't have that tax, then they can afford to sell their stuff more cheaply.
Right.
And now we become so dependent on the cheap garbage that you get from China. No, I don't think there's an argument to be had that when you buy something from China, you kind of look at it, yeah, I guess if it lasts for a little while, it'll last, whatever.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's just, or you use it for, I bought this, I got this, look at how cool it is. Yeah, I thought it was cool too. All right, anyways, you throw it in the fucking garbage and you move along. So, I don't know. But I think if we spent the time and effort to rebuild manufacturing in this country, it would generate an absolute shitload of jobs. Mm-hmm. Good paying jobs, not some government bullshit that's paid through by tax dollars and stuff like that. Good paying jobs that are generational jobs. There was a time where General Electric, especially in this area, was a generational thing. Mm-hmm. My dad worked there and my uncle worked there and my grandfather worked there and yada yada yada.
Yep.
And it having that feeling to a place is nice. It's something to rally around and all that. And
well, and going, if I can piggyback off that just a little bit, we put all this money in our budget to education. Good paying, great manufacturing jobs didn't require education. Like Mike was saying, it was a generational thing. I was like, oh, well, my buddy Nate, he worked at GE 20 years. He got me in the door 5 years ago. They taught me my job, and now I make a good wage, and I can support my family because he got me in there. And all those manufacturing jobs, the very high percentage of them, 80+%, are on the job training, where you're getting paid to learn how to do the job.
Right.
And then you get paid more when you're good at the job. Mm-hmm. And then you have a generational job where you can go,
put you a heck of a lot further ahead than going, a couple $100,000 in debt.
Yeah, starting your adult life without a couple $100,000 in debt for a degree you may or may not.
And there are. I'm not saying there's no places for higher education, because there certainly is.
Sure.
That's where you get innovation in technology and medical and all of these things that have made life so much easier.
Yep.
But what's the old saying? Weak men create hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, then you go back to the front.
Right.
And I think we're at the tail end of that now.
Yep.
Where you need some hard men and you need some hard lessons to make the times much better again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, we've had some hard times. I think it could get harder.
Yeah,
but,
I certain.
We're all optimistic. Hopefully,
and piggybacking off of it, let's hope that we do this podcast again soon, and it's not during World War III.
Right. Oh my God! Yeah.
That could potentially impact manufacturing negatively.
Yeah, that's a scary situation. I don't think Putin's going to use the nukes, but he could.
Yeah, I mean, he most certainly could press the button, and that's the thing, is why would we have authorized use of our long-range weapons against him?
It's insane, man.
That's
right
nuts.
At the end of this failed administration. We could have a whole podcast on that has nothing to do with manufacturing, and it's just like, why in the hell would we do that? We're looking at potentially
self-destructive behavior.
We're looking at a president who wants to end this shit.
Yeah.
He wants to end this crap. We don't need this crap in the world.
I think who Cenk Unger is? Mm-mm. He's a fucking crazy liberal guy. He's always the one shouting at the top of his lungs for liberal things and anti-Trump this and blah blah blah. I think he said it best on his show, he's like, "Well, thanks a lot, Biden. You got to fuck us one more time." With this.
So he's
he's like, when the loudest liberal, thumpers are out there going, "What in the hell, man?"
Yeah, it's gotten
My
crazy.
God, what the hell is this?
Well, yeah, and we need to end here, but yeah, even some of the notable ones like Como, that news guy, he's kind of changed his tune. So I mean,
he's trying to go back to the center.
Some people are seeing some light here, so that's a good thing. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, 2 hours.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, we definitely dove a lot in here, and I loved getting into the Pennsylvania budget because I don't look into that a whole lot. But since my buddy said, "Hey, you really need to look at this," I dove into it, and I've been. Since you sent that to me, he asked me, "You okay? You seem like you're a little upset." Like just.
Well, yeah, and again,
hopefully, the common sense things that we've said can find some ears. And some of these people that are signing off on these budgets, like, we got to stop doing this.
And the thing is, like, as governors go, I don't think Shapiro is doing a bad job compared to Wolf. But I mean, he's the boss. If you're the CEO, you're the one who signs off on the budget. Where's he going? Guys, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
Where are we going to get this extra? This isn't a small amount of money.
Right.
We're overspending. We need to cut this back a little bit. I mean, at worst, we should be spending what we had from the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a surplus, then maybe you go, well, let's up that infrastructure budget. Let's fix an extra 100 miles of road. Let's
get some rats drunk.
Yeah, do something.
Yeah.
Anything.
Oh yeah, you gotta get some rats drunk. Yeah.
Not with the deficit. All right, guys. Well, hey,
Nate, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us. We can't wait to do this again. We were talking about this for a couple of weeks now.
This was some deep territory.
Well, hey, we can get deeper next time.
So.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take care. Right. Bye.
Bye.